What do you do when you discover your passion? When it's coursing through your veins, when it's burning you, what do? I was lucky enough, I found my passion when I was a kid, and it was comic books and superheroes, particularly Batman. And all I wanted to do since I was 8 years old was write Batman comics and show the whole world what the dark and serious, true Batman was like. But how was I going to do that? I had three big problems. I'm a blue-collar kid from New Jersey. I didn't come from money. My dad was a stonemason. My mom was a bookkeeper. I couldn't buy my way into Hollywood. I didn't have any relatives in Hollywood. I didn't know anybody in Hollywood. How do you get there from here? How do you make your dreams come true? Well, you guys, you are looking at the world's total comic book geek. My mom said that I learned to read before I was 4 years old from comic books. I went to the first Comic-Con ever held on the planet Earth, a Fleabag hotel in downtown New York. 200 of us showed up at that first Comic-Con. First time fans were able to meet each other face to face, or more appropriately, pimple to pimple. And by the time I graduated high school, I had over 30,000 comic books dating back to 1936. My pop could not get his car into the garage from the day we moved into the house. So instead, he built 3 shelves on 3 walls, and we went floor to ceiling with my comic book collection until it filled the whole place. But how do you take your passion and make it your work? My first opportunity came when I was in college, early 1970s, Bloomington, Indiana, Indiana University. Now, the early 70s were a time of great experimentation on college campuses, and that's about all I'm going to say about that. So in response to that, Indiana University started an experimental curriculum department, and this was the idea. If you had a notion for a course that had never been taught in college before and could get the backing of a department on campus, you then had the right to appear before a panel of deans and professors and pitch it. If they accepted it, you could teach it on campus for up to 3 hours of credit. I was a junior, but I still could teach it on campus. So I said, this is great. I mean, comic books are a legitimate American art form, as indigenous to this country as jazz. Superheroes are contemporary mythology. I mean, the ancient gods of Greece and Rome and Egypt all still exist, except today they wear spandex and capes. So if you don't buy that, keep in mind that the Greeks called him Hermes, the Romans called him Mercury, and I just call him the Flash. The Greeks called him Poseidon, the Romans called him Neptune. Aquaman, thank you. So I get the backing of the folklore department at Indiana, and they said, Michael, you're right. Whether you call him Ulysses or Beowulf or Superman, it's all the same stories, the same heroes, and it's the same themes. So I walk in to pitch my course. Picture this, my hair's down to my shoulders. I'm wearing a Spider-Man t-shirt. I got a pile of comic books under my arm, and yes, I am wearing my love beads. Thank you very much. As I walk into this conference room, it's dark mahogany. There's a big conference room table there, professors sitting around it, the dean sitting at the end. I thought I had just walked into the secret sanctum of the Justice League. And as I walk in, the dean at the end, you know, he was an older guy. He had this little pair of half glasses that were perched at the edge of his nose. And he looks down at me over his glasses and says, so you're the fellow who wants to teach a course on funny books at my university? I knew I was in deep trouble. I then began the first pitch of my career. He lets me speak for about 2 minutes and cuts me off. He says, Mr. Uslan, stop. He says, come on. I read comic books when I was a kid. I read every issue of Superman I could get my hands on. But all comic books are cheap entertainment for children. Nothing more, nothing less, and I reject your theory. Well, there's a point in time in all of our lives that we have life-changing moments. Because I could have bowed my head, picked up my funny books, and turned and walked out of this room. But instead, figuring I had nothing to lose, I stood my ground and I said, Dean, may I ask you 2 questions? He said, ask me anything you want. I said, are you familiar with the story of Moses? And he looked at me like I was nuts and said, yeah, so? I said, very briefly, could you just recite for me, summarize the story of Moses? Well, he folds his arms and sits back and says, I don't know what game you're playing here, Mr. Uslan, but I'll play this with you. He said the Hebrew people were being persecuted, their firstborn were being slain. Hebrew couple place their infant son in a little wicker basket and send him down the River Nile. There he's discovered by an Egyptian family who raised him as their own son. When he grows up, he becomes a great hero to his people. I go, stop, thank you so much. I said, Dean, you said before that you read Superman comics when you were a kid. By any chance, do you remember the origin of Superman? He said, of course, the planet Krypton was going to blow up. Scientist and his wife placed their infant son in a little rocket ship and sent him to Earth. There he's discovered by the Kents, who raise him as their own son. When he grows up, and with that he freezes, stares at me for what I swear to you was an eternity, and says, your course is accredited. Couldn't believe it. I am now the world's first college professor of comic books. I can't believe I pulled it off. I'm walking back to my apartment, and all of a sudden, inside my head, I can hear my mom. I can hear her voice. Michael, you can have the greatest creative ideas in the world, but if you don't market them, if you don't market yourself, no one will ever know about it. Well, I'm in Bloomington, Indiana, and I'm a junior. I have no resources. What am I going to do? Figuring I had nothing to lose, I picked up a telephone, and I called United Press International. Back then, that was as big a news syndicate as Associated Press is today. I got a reporter on the phone and proceeded to scream at him. I said, what is wrong with you? You're supposed to be the watchdog of society. You're not doing your job. He goes, calm down, sir. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, what am I talking about? Are you kidding me? I hear that there's a course on comic books being taught at Indiana University. Are you telling me as a taxpayer in this state they are using my money to teach our kids comic books? This is outrageous. This has got to be a communist plot to subvert the youth of America, and I slammed down the phone. It took this man 3 days to find out if IU really did have a comic book course, and if so, who was the lunatic teaching it. So he came down, he interviewed me with pictures. It was a third of a page, and that story was picked up by virtually every newspaper in North America and a whole bunch in Europe. My phone started to ring. I was invited on radio and TV talk shows. I had reporters coming to every one of my classes. I had TV cameras coming to every one of my classes. The NBC Nightly News, the CBS Evening News. And about 2 weeks later, my phone rings. And it's this exuberant male voice. Hi, is this Mike Uslan? Yeah. Hiya, Mike. This is Stan Lee from Marvel Comics in New York City. I call this my burning bush moment. This man was my God. Oh, for ye uninitiated, Stan is the co-creator of the entire pantheon of Marvel superheroes. He said, Mike, everywhere I look, I'm seeing you on TV, I'm reading about you in magazines. What you're doing is great for the whole comic book industry. How can I help you? 2 hours later, the phone rings again. A mundane male voice. Mr. Uslan, my name's Saul Harrison. I'm vice president of DC Comics in New York City. We publish Superman, Wonder Woman. I go, yeah, I'm Batman, I know. He goes, we've been listening to you on the radio. We've been reading about you in newspapers. We think you are a very bright and innovative young man. We'd like to fly you to New York City and discuss ways we could work together. Okay. You got to understand, this is a comic book geek dream come true. I'm now in New York City. They offer me a job. I'm to work there summers, and then they're going to put me on retainer when I go back to school at Indiana. I'm there a short while, a couple of weeks, and at the end of the day, about 6 p.m., I hear yelling and screaming coming from one of the editor's offices down the hall, and I go tearing. I go, are you okay? He goes, I am not okay. This was the editor of a comic book called The Shadow. Maybe some of you remember it. It was an Alec Baldwin movie about 20 years ago, and it was a very mysterious superhero, the forerunner to Batman. And all of his adventures took place in the late 30s, early 1940s. He said, I am not all right. He goes, I just found out we have to have a script tomorrow due in, hard deadline for The Shadow. I don't have a script. I don't have a story. I don't even have an idea for a Shadow story. I said, I have an idea for a Shadow story. He said, you do? I didn't. But so what? The door was open this much, and I put my foot into it. And he says, all right, come in, sit down. tell me, what's your idea for a shadow story? I said, well, you're going to love it. It's really great. Well, what's it about? It is about smuggling. Well, what are they smuggling? They are smuggling drugs. Well, what's unusual about that? I said, well, let's see. You know, my wife and I just got back from a trip to Niagara Falls, and back in the 30s and 40s, guys were going over the falls in barrels and walking across on tightropes. I said, picture the Shadow battling a bad guy on a tightrope over Niagara Falls at night with the searchlights. He goes, Michael, that's a great cover. It's a great visual. But what's the catch of the story? I said, well, I've been saving this for the last because this is really, really special. They were going over the falls in barrels. The drugs were in a false bottom in the barrels. They're going over the Canadian side. They're washing up onto the American side. That's how they're getting it through. He goes, well, that's unusual. He goes, listen, could you have a full script on my desk by 6 o'clock tomorrow night? I said, not a problem. He said, go do it. I'm now a writer for DC Comics. Turn in the script. 2 weeks later, I'm walking down the hallway. Remember, my hair's down to my shoulders. Coming toward me is the most important editor in the history of comics, a man named Julie Schwartz, who was responsible in the comics for returning Batman to his dark roots, was responsible for Justice League, Flash, Green Lantern, the list goes on. And he was a gruff guy. Once he got to know me, he was kind of a marshmallow, but he was gruff. And he sees me walking, he goes, hey, kid. I go, yes, Julie. I read your Shadow script. I said, you did? He goes, yeah. It didn't stink. I go, oh my God, thank you. Thank you so much. And he said, how'd you like to take a shot at writing Batman? I still get the chills. This dream I had since I was 8 years old comes true. Why Batman for me? Why did I fall in love with this character? Because he had no superpowers. The only superhero with no real superpowers. His greatest superpower is his humanity. And man, when I was 8, in my heart of hearts, I really believed I could be this guy. I thought if I studied hard, and if I worked out real hard, and if my dad bought me a cool car, I could be him. Well, my dream came true, folks. And then I panicked, because now I didn't have a dream. Oh my God, I need a new dream. 10 minutes for the epiphany. I need to show the world what the true Batman is, as created in 1939. A dark knight, a creature of the night, stalking criminals from the shadows. Because I remembered back to a cold night in January 1966, when I couldn't wait. I've been waiting for months. The Batman TV series was about to debut. It comes on the air. I'm so excited. It's in color. That was good. Sets were extravagant. But I was simultaneously thrilled and horrified by what I was seeing on TV. Because while the car was cool, it hit me. They're playing Batman as a joke. The whole world was laughing at Batman, and that killed me. And so right then and there, I made a vow. I was in my den downstairs, but I made a vow just like young Bruce Wayne once made a vow. But he made his vow over the bloody bodies of his parents in the street. My parents were safe in the kitchen. But I said, somehow, someday, some way, I am going to show the world the true Batman. And I'm going to find a way to eliminate from the collective consciousness of the world culture these 3 little words, pow, zap, and wham. So the day finally came when I thought it was my moment. And I went back to the president of DC Comics who had mentored me into the company, and I said, Sal, I want to buy the rights to Batman. I want to start making dark and serious Batman movies and show the world the true character. He was horrified, and he was very fatherly to me. He put his arm around me, he says, Michael, for God's sake, don't do this. I don't want to see you lose all your money. Don't you understand that since Batman went off the air in TV, the brand is as dead as a dodo? Nobody's interested in Batman anymore. I said, yeah, but if we do it in a dark, serious way, nobody's ever seen a comic book movie like that. It'll kind of be like a new form of entertainment. He said, is there any way I can talk you out of this? I said, no. He said, all right, come on in. So if anyone wonders how a kid in his 20s was able to buy the rights to Batman to make into movies, the very unglamorous answer is nobody else on the planet Earth showed up. Nobody else wanted it. Well, I finally, after a 6-month negotiation, we raised some money privately, got the rights, put it in my back pocket, and I went out to Hollywood. I went out to Hollywood sure I was going to have a slam dunk easy time of this. Every studio is going to just line up at my doorstep. How could they not? How could they not understand the potential for sequels and merchandise and games and toys and animation? I was turned down by every single studio in Hollywood. And that's not even the right way to say it. I was virtually thrown out of everyone's offices. They told me it was the worst idea they ever heard. They told me I was crazy. Michael, you can't do serious comic book movies. Michael, you're nuts. You cannot do dark superheroes. Michael, you're out of your mind. You can't make a movie based on an old TV series. It's never been done. I pitched the dark and serious Batman at Columbia Pictures. The guy there had been head of production for about 20 years, dapper, silver-haired gent. And I pitched my heart out. And at the end, he looks at me, gives me a tisk-tisk, and says, Michael, you're crazy. Batman will never be successful as a movie because our movie, Annie, didn't do well. Are you talking about the little red-headed girl who sings Tomorrow? Yeah. Well, what does that have to do with Batman? Oh, come on, Michael. They're both out of the funny pages. That was my rejection of Columbia. It took us 10 years to get our first Batman movie made from the time we acquired the rights. 10 years of rejection. 10 years of being told my ideas were lousy. 10 years of being told you're no good. You know what that does? It really tests your mettle as a human being. You've got to look deep inside yourself and go, okay now, is everybody right and I'm just being stubborn? Or do I really, truly, totally believe in this and believe in myself? And I kept coming up with the latter answer. Well, around 1986, a young genius by the name of Tim Burton waltzes into our lives. And through his vision, and he deserves all the accolades for this, through his vision, he realized that if we are going to do a serious comic book superhero movie that will not get unintentional laughs from the audience, it had to be not about Batman. It had to be about Bruce Wayne. The whole key, it has to be about Bruce Wayne. Audiences must believe in Bruce Wayne and believe he is so crazed to the point of being psychotic that, yes, this is a guy who would get dressed up as a bat and go out and fight a guy like the Joker, which is why he realized Michael Keaton was the guy who could sell that role as Bruce Wayne. To me, I was afraid, oh my God, Mr. Mom is Batman. What is happening to me? But Tim was absolutely right, absolutely right. And that movie broke every box office record. It was impacting the world culture. In fact, it has changed the very nature of Hollywood, for better or worse, and the comic book industry as well. After about 2 weeks of phenomenal box office, I get a call, and it's the guy from 10 years ago at Columbia. Michael, I'm just calling to congratulate you on the success of Batman. I always said you were a visionary. Epiphany. If you don't believe them when they tell you how bad you are and how lousy your work is, but if you then don't believe them when they start to tell you how wonderful you are and how great all your ideas are, and just continue to believe in yourself, you'll be okay. We had another genius pop into our lives a number of years later by the name of Christopher Nolan, who completely reinvented the Batman mythos on screen and restored the darkness and dignity to Batman, elevating the comic book movie to the point when you walk out of one of Chris's movies, you don't have to say, that was a great comic book movie, you can say that was a great film. So what a journey for me this has been. And I told you in the beginning that my dad was a stonemason. My pop had to drop out of high school when he was 16 to go to work to help his family through the Depression. He worked 6 days a week till he was 80. He loved what he did. He was an old world craftsman, an artist. He would make fireplaces and things with brick and stone and mortar. And It was amazing. Every day we'd see him get up before dawn with a smile on his face, couldn't wait to get to work. And when you grow up in a house like that with someone like that, how could you not want that for yourself? How could you not want to wake up on a rainy Monday morning and say, boy, I can't wait to get to work? And that's why I decided to pursue my passions, my bricks and stones. And I'm going to leave you with a poem by Robert Frost that has been my guidepost since 8th grade, and I continue to follow it today. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere, ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I chose the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Thank you very much.